Handa na ba you?
Handa na mi.
Ano? Handa na mi?
Handa na mi.
BBM or Pacman?
Epal o bida-bida na miyembro ng gabinete?
Kung may susuportahan o i-endorso man si Pangulong Duterte sa pagkapangulo, anong letra kaya ang meron sa kanyang pangalan?
Cellphone.
Face mask. Alcohol.
May one and only.
Yan!
Ang aking mga kaibigan ngayon, mga millennial.
Maraming mga nega gusto ko ipa-deport sa ibang planeta.
Day after day, I must face a world of strangers.
Ang bandila ng Pilipinas sabay-sabay taas.
It will take a strong man. Alright! Pwede ka bang tumayo para ipakita kung anong suot mong pang-ibaba?
Ang basketball.
Pakita mo, bakit? Dadamayan kita kasi naka-shorts na yun.
I was expecting harder questions like love life.
Oh, Ina and Michael, ito pinakakatakutan ko na programa niya.
Diba, it's always nice to see yung lighter side ng mga ini-interview natin.
It's been a wonderful experience tong pag-guest ko sa inyong show.
Ngayon lang ako nakaranas ng ganito.
Matanggal na stress.
Maraming salamat, lalo na sa Ratatat.
Ratatat! Ratsadang tanong, tapatan at tarang, tahan.
Good morning! Happy Thursday! It's June 23. Para makipagkwentuhan at kulitan kasama ang mga taong nasa sentro ng balita ngayon. Dito lamang po yan sa Politiskoop. Ako si Ina Andolong.
Michael Fajatin po, good morning.
At happy Thursday! And alam nyo, baka akala ng mga viewers natin, nakakalimutan natin that it's Pride Month at hindi natin guest sa pag-celebrate ng buwan na ito. But it is still Pride Month, okay? Hindi kami magpapahuli sa mga diskusyon tungkol sa pagkilala sa mga kapatid natin sa LGBT plus community.
Yan, dami nun eh.
At ito mismong Pride Month, nakakalungkot na may isang insidente ng diskriminasyon laban sa isang trans woman na nangyari sa Cavite.
Ngayon, may papasok na bagong administrasyon. Ano kayang hinaharap ng matagal nang isinusulong na SOGI Bill? Ano-ano rin kaya ang mga panawagan ng LGBT community kay President-elect Bongbong Marcos?
And welcome back. It's been a while to Politiskoop, Bataan Representative Geraldine Roman.
Twinning with Ina Andolong.
Hi, ma'am.
Yan.
Hello.
Nakakaloka.
Diba? Twinning sila.
Iba parang orange.
Twinning.
Para tayong flag ng India.
Parang
Anyway,
nag-uusap pa.
happy Pride Month sa iyo, Michael and Ina, and all of our brothers and sisters from the LGBT community. Alam niyo, itong Pride Month, Michael, Ina, is not only for the members of the LGBT community, it's for the entire society. Lahat ng kumikilala ng pagkakapantay-pantay ng mga karapatan sa ilalim ng ating batas, syempre, nagse-celebrate dapat ng Pride Month.
Correct. Okay.
Ang sabi nga, may nababasa ko palagi ang pinaka parang slogan eh. You don't have to be gay to support the LGBT community. You just only have to be human. Yan. Kaya tawagin lahat yan. Kasama tayong lahat, syempre.
Truly, Lee.
Ay, I'm ready.
Simula na kagad ready na kagad si ma'am sa ratatat natin. True, lalo na kagad.
Okay. But ma'am, we'll start off first dun sa recent incident which I mentioned doon sa aming intro. I saw your video talking about that issue and you were clearly very emotional about yung ano ba tawag? Anyway, pinagbawalan ng isang trans woman na magsalita sa isang high school graduation ceremony where she was invited as guest speaker. Una sa lahat, ma'am, may update po ba kayo dun sa, was anyone reprimanded, held accountable for what happened?
Well, just a short briefer, no? The invited speaker was quite a popular political vlogger, si Miss Sass
Rogando
Rogando
Sasot.
Sasot. Okay. And she was invited as a guest speaker sa graduation ng Southern Philippines Institute of Science and Technology. Tapos yung SPIST, they hired, no? They rented a venue which was owned by a Church of God, no? The Church of God, yun ang pangalan ng denomination. So less than 12 hours before the actual event, nalaman noong Church of God na ang guest speaker ay isang trans woman. So they spoke to SPIST to tell them na, hey, if you don't change your guest speaker, we will not allow you to hold your graduation ceremony. Ang problema nun, napamigay na yung mga invitation at handa na yung guest speaker. So, nanakot pa yung Church of God. Sabing ganon, pag pinagpilitan nyo yan, puputulan namin kayong kuryente and we will even send security guards to escort the guest speaker out. So anyway, nanindigan yung SPIST, tapos habang nagsasalita si Miss Sass, no, about her experience in Europe and her achievements to serve as an inspiration to the graduating students, bigla na lang namatay yung ilaw at
Or
tinanggalan siya
pinatay.
ng microphone. Yes, pinatay, okay. And then, fortunately, at saka nakakatuwa naman, yung mga estudyante, sinindihan nila yung kanilang mga cellphone at sumisigaw sila ng respeto. And dating na mga malalaking katawan ng mga security guard at gusto nilang escort out si Miss Sass. Anyway, they had to cancel, I think, what was left of their graduation ceremony. And there was an uproar first in the schools and then sa loob ng LGBT community kasi ito ay malinaw na kaso ng diskriminasyon, especially when you read the statement given by the Church of God. And sabi dun sa statement, we do not allow the LGBT to desecrate the pulpit. Turns out, yung venue pala na ginagamit is also used for worship by the Church of God. Ang problema nga, may kontrato sila with the school, but nowhere in the contract does it say na bawal ang LGBTQ plus na mag-participate. So, late na yung announcement nila at they push through with their threat. So, as to your question, meron bang nagawa? Doon sa Cavite, where this incident took place, ay merong isang anti-discrimination ordinance na malinaw nagsasabi, you cannot discriminate against anyone in Cavite on the basis of your one's sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. Kaya nga lang, to my knowledge, hindi pa kinakasuhan ng provincial government ng Cavite yung Church of God. And in an interview, I saw Governor John Vic Remulla say that he is not inclined to press any charges against the Church of God. But he did call out this group through his official Facebook page na sinasabi niya, this is not what Cavite is all about. Cavite is about inclusion. And may I also extend, the Philippines should be about openness and inclusion. Dapat walang na-exclude na tao. Napakasakit, Ina. Masakit sa akin as a trans woman. Kahit ano pa pala ang pagka-qualified mo, pagka-decente mo, pagka-hardworking mo, pagka-successful mo, simply because you happen to be a trans woman, hindi ka pwedeng tumuntong sa isang lugar, no? Sana naman lang sinabi na nila from the very start, di ba?
Oo, kasi she was invited di ba?
Yeah.
Yun yung mahirap doon.
How do you feel about that though? Kasi nga, Cavite has as you mentioned, anti-discrimination ordinance. And yet, the governor is saying that he's not inclined to, file any charges or something like that. Parang para kay pa yun. How do you feel as an advocate for the, at LGBT community na meron ka nga, something clearly happened, and yet, anong silbi nun? How do you feel about it?
Well, as a trans woman, I feel, and as a LGBT rights activist, I feel frustrated kasi merong batas, pero tila baga walang political will. I'm just saying, I'm just speculating here. I'm not accusing the provincial government of Cavite because I know Governor John Vic, he is for equality. And I'm trying to understand where he's coming from. It will all boil down to the classic debate of religious freedom versus LGBT rights, which for me are not two irreconcilable things. Hindi naman kinakailangan mamili ka between religious freedom and LGBT rights. Pwede mo namang pagsamahin yan. Ang sinasite kasi usually ng mga religious groups when they exercise discrimination is that this is part of their religious beliefs. Ako naman kasi, pinag-aaralan ko, I've been observing these groups. Normally, these are fundamentalist groups, evangelical groups. Wala naman silang book of doctrines like the Catholic Church. Kahit nga sa Catholic Church, wala naman sinasabi, you shall prohibit access to members of the LGBT community in churches and places of worship. I do not see that in any kind of religion. So, if this is not part of your official doctrine, therefore, it cannot be considered as officially your religious belief. These are just personal beliefs and personal prejudice and biases. So that is not protected under the Constitution. Yun na nga ang ina-abuse yung freedom of religion or freedom to practice your religion. I do not see kung paano yung pagsasalita ni Ms. Sass sa harapan ng mga estudyante will stop the Church of God from exercising their religion. At ang nakakaya dyan, there was a clear example 2,000 years ago. There was a man who walked the streets of Galilee, of Nazareth, of Jerusalem, and he rubbed elbows with sinners, so-called sinners. He dined with them, he ate with them, he spoke to them, he ministered to them. And you know who I'm talking about, right? That was Jesus Christ. And you have a group of men, of pastors who consider themselves to be holy. Halo pa nila si Jesucristo. Nakaka-frustrate yan, di ba? Hindi gagawin ni Jesucristo yan kung
And
naglalakad
to give
siya.
context to your story, ma'am, kasi I'm a bit of a Bible buff myself, no? Ang sabi nga nung mga apostolis niya, mga apostles niya, why are you mingling, dining, nakikihalubilo ka sa mga yan? Sabi niya, mga makasalanan. Ang sabi ni Kristo, ako ay pinapunta ng aking ama para sa kanila, specifically. Para gano'n. So parang, yun nga, ibig sabihin, this world is, sabi nga, no one is righteous, no, not one. Kahit isa. Yan, yun po yung sinasabi. No? Pero just to give context din, ma'am, no, for our discussion, yung sinasabi, bakit kaya hindi nagpa-file si Governor Remulla? Ako, I read kanina lang, ewan ko kung kilala niyo po si Jesus Falsis.
Yes,
he's a supporter
attorney.
also
Yes.
He's a supporter ng LGBTQ Saka under the Cavite's Anti-Discrimination Ordinance po daw, acts of discrimination only include discrimination against LGBT students, against LGBT employees, against LGBT availing of commercial, public services or housing, and LGBT subjected to illegal and inhuman search and seizure. Nothing po daw covers churches and their properties. One
Excuse me. Yes, yung commercial purposes, places that are used for commercial purposes. Di ba? Nire-rent
yun yung
out nila
ginamit.
yan and they call it a donation, but it is required. It is, in fact, a payment. So if you open your venue to the public and you charge fees, that is for commercial purposes, even though you call it for donation. So yun, maaring pumasok dun sa...
Maaari po. Doon nga rin po nakita ko pero ito, di ba yung usapin po ng LGBT, syempre you're one of those sponsors here. Yung lagi po doon nagiging problema, like Senator Soto daw and Senator Villanueva, the reason why they're blocking the anti-discrimination bill is yung religious beliefs being forced to accept LGBTs is one of the off-cited reasons ng mga senators. Ito po yung konteksto, ma'am. Ito po ba yung sinasabi kasi parang pag yung infringing on religious freedoms, wag ipilit sa kanila. Ito po ba yung nakikita nyo na maaring pagmulan o ginagamit din sa mga denominations to to have their protection, justified protection?
Yes,
Ganun po ba?
yes, it is an often abused freedom as provided for in the Constitution, but there are very easy arguments against that kind of abuse. As I said, according to jurisprudence by the Supreme Court, unless you can prove that it is a firmly held belief and it forms part of your official doctrine of your church, it cannot be considered as your religious belief. Kasi naman, isipin mo, kung we allow a very loose
Mhm.
definition of religious freedom to include personal beliefs, as in individual beliefs. My
Mhm.
God,
Mhm.
anyone can cite na ito'y bahagi ng aking
Oo.
paniniwala. If I start stealing left and right to be able to donate
Mm.
to the poor, I can say, oh
Oo.
my God, that's my deeply held religious belief. But
Mhm.
in fact, that is a criminal act. That's
Mhm.
theft
Mhm.
or robbery. So ako,
Mhm.
it's a question. You cannot abuse this so-called freedom of religion.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
your freedom of religion, for me, should only cover what involves your personal practice. But once you
Opo.
step on the rights of others, that's where your right ends.
Aha,
Diba? Yun ang
aha, aha.
often times na kasabihan na ang karapatan mo ay natatapos kung saan nagsisimula ang karapatan ng iba.
Iba.
Ngayon, yun na nga, kailangan talaga siguro may mag-file ng kaso para
Mhm.
ma-define na once and for all ng Supreme Court kung ano
Mhm.
ba talaga ang coverage ng freedom of religion.
Mhm. Were you able to talk to Miss Sass? Kasi, kunyari, in this case po, dapat po ba siya ang mag-file or anybody can file for her? May ganun po ba?
Maaring yung eskwelahan, maaring yung
Mhm.
ah, siya mismo,
Mhm.
maaring kasi nga the problem is the prosecutor cannot step in
Mhm.
the absence of
May
a
complainant.
national law.
Mhm.
And this is the reason, if po ang
Mhm.
dahilan kung bakit kinakailangan natin ng isang anti-discrimination
Mhm.
law
Mhm.
on the national scale. Kasi nga, ang nangyayari para sa kaalaman ng ating mga viewers, marami pong
Mhm.
mga LGU tulad ng
Mhm.
Cavite, tulad ng Bataan,
Oo,
tulad
ordinansa
ng
lang. Mhm.
Quezon City, ordinansa. At
Mhm.
bagamat ito ay nagpo-provide ng protection, ah, hindi po pwede. It goes against the very
Oo,
essence of
oo.
equality. You have parts of
Mhm.
the Philippines that are
Mhm.
that provide protection, but you have other parts of the Philippines
Mhm.
wherein
Or
there are
most.
no. Yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yun ang malungkot. Kaya nga kinakailangan natin ng isang national anti-discrimination law. And when I talk about anti-discrimination, not only against members of the LGBT community, in
Mhm.
fact,
Mhm.
Ina, Michael, we have a comprehensive anti-discrimination bill na umuusad nung nakaraang kongreso, and the
Mhm.
protective attributes or the grounds for discrimination as defined by that bill includes sex, gender, age, religion, ethnicity, physical appearance, health status, as well as sexual orientation and gender
Mhm.
identity and expression. And as expected, the same conservative sectors who opposed the SOGI Equality Bill wanted to take out sexual orientation and gender
Mhm.
identity and expression as a protected attribute. Kumbaga
Mhm.
sinasabi nila, okay, tanggap namin na bawal mag-discriminate on the basis of age, na pag sinasabing, ay,
Mhm.
matanda ka na masyado kahit
Mhm.
qualified ka para sa trabaho na to, o dahil pangit ka, bawal yan, pinatanggap
Mhm.
nila yan. Pero kung i-discriminate ka dahil ikaw ay member of the LGBTQ community, ayaw nilang tanggapin na kinakailangan ng LGBTQ
Mhm.
community ng
Proteksyon.
protection.
Mhm.
That by itself is an act of discrimination and sheds
Ah.
light on the true nature of these people.
Mhm.
Ma'am,
May
just a clarification, ano po difference nung bill na sinasabi niyo sa SOGI? You
Ang
are pushing
SOGI
for both.
equality.
Ano po ba?
Yes, I'm pushing for both. And SOGI Equality Bill is specific.
Mhm.
Actually, when we talk about sexual orientation and gender identity and expression, uh, most of the cases of discrimination happen against members of the LGBT community. But everyone, I want to remind everyone, lahat tayo ay meron sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. Imagine, for example, Michael, ikaw ay nasa trabaho and na-fire ka dahil pagkamalang kang bakla. You
Mhm.
can cite the SOGI Equality Bill and
Mhm.
count on its protection. Yun. Kaya nga lang, the sad fact of the matter is that most cases of discrimination occur and are committed against members of the LGBT community kasi yon ang kinoconsider ng society as a whole as kakaibang sexual orientation and gender identity and expression.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. What do you think, ma'am? Ano ang prospects ng SOGI bill as well as yung mas comprehensive bill that you're talking about in the upcoming administration, in the incoming rather administration?
Okay, ganito yan.
Mhm.
Good news. Ako, nung nangangampanya ako last March, dumating si President-elect BBM sa Bataan at nakausap ko siya. What are your thoughts, sir, on Manong, tawag namin,
Mhm.
on the rights of the LGBT community? And he said that he is against discrimination. He said that all Filipinos, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, should be provided equal opportunities, equal rights, and equal protection under the law. So that says a lot.
Mhm.
Tapos, sa House, incoming Speaker, Martin Romualdez, for the longest time has supported the SOGI Equality Bill. And this is an agreement between the two of us. I am a member and an official of the Lakas CMD
Mhm.
party, which he heads in Congress. So, pinag-usapan namin yan. He's very supportive of this legislation. Tapos naman sa upper house, I know for a fact that palagay ko siya na magiging Senate President.
Mhm.
Senator Mig Zubiri is a staunch supporter
Mhm.
of equality. Plus, of course, nandiyan dyan si Manang Amy Marcos,
Yun, the
ang
presidential, doon ako
proverbial,
pupunta eh. Oo.
ang proverbial babaeng
Oo.
bakla. Di
Yeah,
ba?
exactly. Oo po.
So,
Aminado
yan.
siya dyan. Oo. Mm.
Maganda ang prospects. Kasi nga yung last Congress, my lord, yung dating Senate President, he allowed, in my opinion, an irregularity
Mm.
to happen in the Senate. Senator Joel Villanueva,
Mhm.
yung status ng SOGI Equality Bill dun sa Senate was that it was on second reading, period of interpellations on the floor. So ang
Mhm.
gagawin ng Senator Joel, he would enlist himself as one of the interpellators. And then
Mhm.
when the time came, he would not be present. And then his staff would ask, okay, next week. Okay, next
Oo.
week ulit.
Oo.
Paulit-ulit, hindi naman sumisipot. Ayun, natapos ang
Inupuan.
18th Congress,
Mhm. Mhm.
napanis. And so back to
Mhm.
square one ang SOGI Equality Bill. But hindi tayo titinag.
Oo.
Paunti-unting
Hopeful po.
umuusad ang, yeah,
Mhm.
we're hopeful. And wala namang mawawala sa ating
Mhm.
bansa. Nais kong paalala sa lahat
Mhm.
na mga nakikinig ngayong umaga na walang mababawas sa inyong mga karapatan kung
Mhm.
kikilalanin nyo na mga LGBTQ+ ay meron ding karapatang mag-aral, magtrabaho, tumanggap ng serbisyo mula sa pamahalaan, gumamit ng mga commercial and public establishments, gumamit ng mga public accommodations, at tumanggap ng proteksyon laban sa
Mhm.
pambabastos, panghahamak at diskriminasyon. Ang mangyayari lang sa ating bansa pag tinanggap natin yung batas na yan, Social Equality Bill, is lahat ng tao mabibigyan ng pagkakataong maging happy sa mundo, maging productive citizen of our country, di lahat happy.
Oo
Yeah.
nga. Ako ang word ko diyan, ma'am, sino bang ayaw ng respetuhan? 'Di ba yung parang gano'n? Kasi talagang sa ating buhay ngayon ako, ang daming mga ganyan, no? So, respetuhan po, guys, no? Hindi naman tayo nabubuhay na sa 1940s to 70s makabagong
Oo.
panahon na po ngayon.
Mm.
'Di po ba?
Correct.
Are you hopeful also the incoming senators pa, yung mga bago? Like si Robin Padilla, yan, isa pa yan
Robin
siguro, no?
Padilla, oh my
Mm.
gosh, o di ba,
Mm.
galing rin naman siya ng showbiz. Sino ba
Mm.
naman ang walang nakikilalang member of the
Oo.
LGBTQ plus community sa showbiz? Of
Oo.
course, sino pa ba ang ating mga bagong senador? Hindi ba, sina Jesus Escudero is supportive,
Rafi Tulfo.
Senator
Raffy
Lauren is
Tulfo,
Oo,
Senator
Senator Lauren,
Lauren,
oo.
oo.
Although
So
what
yan,
you mentioned, isa lang po
Mark
yung nawala
Villar
dun sa dalawa.
supportive, oo.
Opo, ayan. Oo.
Okay,
So,
we'll see.
anong timeline, ma'am? Anong timeline sa nakikita nyo? Ayan, sige.
Wala, as soon as pwedeng magfa-file na tayo ng SOGI Equality Bill as well as the Comprehensive Anti-Discrimination Bill. Kaya dalawa yung final ko kasi nga, as a safety measure, madalas kasi ginagamit ng opponents ng bill na sinasabi, yung SOGI Equality Bill, that's too specific for the LGBT community, which is wrong. Sabi ko nga, lahat tayo ng sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. Sinasabi na it's class legislation, you want a privileged treatment. Sabi ko, there's nothing wrong about class legislation because women, senior citizens, minors, PWDs, OFWs, lahat ng mga sectors that for the longest time had been subjected to marginalization, kinakailangan may special batas tulad ng mga IP. So what's wrong if we have a specific law to help mostly the members of the LGBT community? Ngayon, kung ayaw ng very specific, we can do with a comprehensive anti-discrimination bill. But pangungunahan ko na sila, hindi ako papayag tanggalin yung SOGI as a protected attribute. Kung kinikilala nyo na masama at bawal at illegal mag-discriminate on the basis of sex, age, gender, ethnicity, religion, physical appearance, etc., etc., dapat kilalanin nyo na masama rin at dapat maging illegal ang mag-discriminate dahil kakaiba yung sexual orientation and gender identity and expression.
Hindi na kayong tao sa mundo. Yan, oo. Pero ano ba nagiging, ma'am? Ano bang pinaka-heaviest, kumbaga, hurdle ninyo sa batas na ito? Ang pinakamalakas na argument nila, or, siyempre in your case, no, pinaka parang doon sila umaangkla o nag-anchor on resisting these laws to be passed?
Well, yung mga opponents, they bank on fear. Fear of the unknown. Naku, meron mga nagsasabi dyan, Diyos ko, pag nagkakaroon ng committee deliberations, they want to turn the committee deliberations into a Bible study session. Panay quotes ng Bibles, which for me is respectable. But really, this is not the venue. Congress is not the venue to share your religious beliefs and to try to proselytize and mag-convert ka. No, it's not the venue. We are working within a state where there is separation between the church and the state. So if there is anything they don't like about the law, the committee meeting or hearing is the venue, para tukuyin nyo, ano bang ayaw nyo? Pwede nating ayusin to, ganyan, ganyan. But you cannot cite your religious beliefs because number one, not all Filipinos...
Just to block it. Just to block it generally. Parang gano'n.
Yes. Tapos sabihin pa na, nag-warning, ako magkakaroon ng Sodom and Gomorrah. We will call upon ourselves the punishment and the wrath of God. But to my knowledge, many countries, developed countries in Europe and the United States, sumisikat pa naman ng araw sa mga bansa nito, kahit meron silang mga batas na nagproproteksyon sa LGBT community.
At mas masaya pa sila.
Yes. Alam mo, wala naman talagang solid arguments sila. It's all, it's ad hominem arguments. It's counting on fear and ignorance.
Machismo,
And this is the reason why
ganun,
they have to resort to delaying tactics like what was employed in the Senate. Sabi ko nga, if you have strong arguments, then be ready to defend them in an intelligent debate, in a committee hearing, or on the floor. But do not employ these cheap tricks are so unbecoming.
Kasi BBM po, may sinabi, di ba Ina? May sinabi si President-elect BBM dyan, it's not a polarizing issue daw.
Yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts on that, ma'am. Sige, ang isang quote niya, which I found interesting, was that this issue of LGBT sa Philippines is not a polarizing issue for him. First off, do you agree?
Be a polarizing issue.
It's not a polarizing issue. Kumbaga, we're at a better position compared to other countries. Mas open-minded daw ang mga Pilipino sa issue ng LGBT community. Do you agree with that? I mean, you mentioned, syempre, yung mga developed countries, US, Canada, ganyan. Compared to other countries, how is the LGBT community sa atin po? Are they in a better position? Ano po ba?
Well, this is what I have to say. Here in the Philippines, members of the LGBT community are tolerated. But, ay namatay yung camera ko. Teka,
Sayang ang beauty, sayang ang beauty. Yeah.
Okay.
Members of the LGBTQ plus community are tolerated but not necessarily accepted. Especially when we have visibility, nakikita natin maraming mga entertainers, mga personalities, famous personalities, showbiz personalities are from the community like Vice Ganda and Jake Zyros, o sa politics, yours truly. But if kung totoo ang sinasabi na dito ay tinatanggap na, then put it down on writing. Like natin sa batas. The problem with the religious and conservative sectors is that they often cite na, hey, hindi na kailangan yan dahil tanggap na sa ating lipunan. Kung tanggap ba talaga, bakit nangyayari ang incident katulad noong dun sa Church of God sa Cavite? O, di ba? At bakit ayaw nyo na magkaroon tayo ng batas? Dahil, why? Because gusto nyo talaga na meron kayong free hand at discrimination. You want to be able to discriminate against fellow Filipinos on the basis of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and you want to get away with it. That's why you don't want this law. Let's not be hypocritical. Diba? Kung talagang sinasabi nyo, oh, we respect the LGBT community, then you should support a law that will actually recognize their legal rights. Dahil talagang nangyayari ang diskriminasyon. And the sad fact of the matter is that most of these cases happen dahil sa mga kataong katulad ninyo who used the name of God to discriminate against fellow human beings.
Yan,
Oh.
malinaw. Ako ang tanong ko, ma'am, ganito. Meron bang katotohanan na it can be some sort of a generational gap? Yung mga, alam niyo na, yung mga lolo natin na
Yes.
medyo
Truly.
sobrang higpit sa ganyan, parang gano'n. And yung bright future that, you know, generations are coming in, no, na yung ating technology is coming in, di ba, parang, is there a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, very near future that, you know, kasi nagbabagong panahon talaga. So napapalitan din ito mga nag-iisip na ito na parang sila ang may kapangyarihan at
Sabi
sila
ko
ang
nga,
nagtatalaga ng
Michael.
ating moralidad.
Yes,
Sige
you
po.
know what, Michael, alam mo, mga millennials, mga Gen Zers, they are able to access information. They don't have to actually travel to other countries to know that there are laws that ensure equality among their citizens, no? And they see that in these countries, the sun continues to rise and people are happy. And
Yeah.
people are able to work and to become their best selves and develop their full potential. They are able to be themselves. They are able to love those who they truly love without being judged against. And who doesn't like that kind of liberty and freedom? Ngayon, kung ayaw mo dahil sa yung religious belief, edi huwag ka magpakasal sa kapwa lalaki o sa kapwa babae.
Hindi naman
Huwag
pinipilit.
ka maging bakla as if that were a
Oo.
choice. Diba? So, yun ang aking hope. Ang mga kabataan, open-minded, very tolerant, very correct in their views. And yung older generations na, especially yung mga feeling holier than thou, kinukuha na sila ni Lord.
Oo, yun yan. Ako, yan. Sige. Mapapadali kayo sa inyong mga kunin na kayo ni Lord. Sige. Kasi malapit kayo kano eh. Salita kayo ng salita ng ganyan. Marami kayo kinakot.
Natawa tuloy si
Ako na, medyo nabilaw ka din. Kami po, kunyari, sa mga pamilya, no? Ako, inabutan ko siguro, wala na, kasi we're
Walang
quite a liberal
pinanilingan si Ma'am na specific, ha? That's a
wala,
general.
general yun, ha? Kung nabilawakan kayo dyan, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Baka nakakita kayo yung light at the end of the tunnel, ikang. Pero ito, ma'am, ako, kunyari, mga anak ko, di ba? We are, actually, it's not a discussion anymore. Di ba? They have friends over who are members of the LGBTQ. Some I even treat as my, ano ba ito? Second daughter, second sons, mga ganun. Wala. Normal na. And then, alam mo, para pag nag-uusap po, ito yung sinasabi ko kayo na yung generational gap. Pag nag-uusap po, yung wala na, ang gagaling gumamit ng mga pronouns, yung mga ganon. So, dati po kasi parang ang hirap tawagin kung ano ba ito, parang ganon. So, yung mga ganon po, it's also an environment thing sa bahay mo, sa ganon. Do you think the parents also should also, itong hirap dati ng mga panahon, olden times, isama ko na yun sa akin, no? Ang hirap, pag mag-express ka ng sarili mo, papagalita ka, papaluin ka ng tatay mong pulis, militar o ano man, parang gano'n. O, kahit nga may anak kang babae, parang titibo-tibo. Diba? May mga kantang ganyan di ba? So, ang hirap din, ang lumalaki yung mga bata, saka lang hihintayin nila, ito yung worry ko kasi meron din ako mga kamag-anak na ganyan. Matanda na siya, hindi pa niya masabi, pero alam naman ng tatay at nanay niya. May parang tatay at nanay mo yan, kayo dapat di ba, close to each other.
Well,
Kaya
in an ideal world.
Parang ganun ang nangyayari pa.
Oo, in an ideal world. Alam mo, napakapalad ko, because both my mother and my father were very supportive. Considering na sila ay yung mga, well, medyo may edad na sila. My mom is already 82 years old. My father passed away. But as far as my memory goes back, talagang never nila akong judge. Never nila akong pinarusahan because of who I am. In fact, provide sila ng emotional support, even spiritual support, Mapalad ako kahit yung mga Jesuita dun sa Ateneo, they provided me spiritual support, telling me that what is important is one's heart, kung ano yung nasa puso. And really, the matter of gender or how you identify yourself, hindi naman ganun kalaking issue kay Lord. And so, ideally, sana ang mga magulang, they will let the love prevail. Kayo mga magulang kayo, di ba? Parang ang laging requirement nyo lang, basta healthy ang anak ko, ano pa man siya.
Yun, exactly. Lagi
Diba?
sinasabi yan, di ba?
Oo,
Buntis, di ba? Basta healthy. Oo, normal at
alam mo,
healthy.
meron akong kaibigan, no, very conservative siya. Tinanong ko siya, pagka nagkaroon ka ba ng anak na Becky, mamahalin mo? Oo naman. Eh, nung gagawin mo? Eh, di alagaan kong hair niya, ang kanyang
Yeah.
teeth, ang kanyang skin.
Di ba
So,
naging beauty? Ano ba?
oo, yung beauty. Hindi, but the message is let the love prevail. Hindi madali ang maging LGBTQ. Can you imagine yung pinagdadaanan ng LGBTQ na bata habang lumalaki siya na yung mga friends niya, iba ang mindset. Tapos he or she feels different. Tapos nakakatanggap siya ng judgment at saka meron din panlilibak. And you know how kids can be cruel
Yes,
at
ma'am.
times, di ba? Yung tuksuhan, ganyan-ganyan. And ang tanong is, you know, basically that was the same question na lumalaki ako. I was very spiritual. I would often engage in prayer. And I would ask God or the divine, why did you create me this way? Kung if you really meant to make me a man, why did you give me this kind of mindset? Nang isip ko, babae ako, ang heart ko babae. Kaya nga yung katawan ko at that time was different, ano? So, it's a struggle. And napakahirap. If I had a choice, sana hindi na lang ako naging LGBTQ. Sana naging macho na lang ako like my brothers. I would have been a macho politician. Maybe by now I'd be married to a lovely wife. I would have children. Maybe I would have a couple or 3 queridas, you know?
Yan. May ganun pa talaga.
Okay.
Oo.
Sana, di happy, no? Pero hindi, ito na to. I was born with this mindset. Kung pwede lang magpa-transplant ng brain. O pag wala naman eh. This is how I was, I am, and I will be. And I had no choice. And this is the same case with my brothers and sisters in the LGBT community. We had no choice. Kung may choice lang, who in his or her right mind would actually choose to live in a world full of discrimination? Napaka-complicated.
Yes,
So the question is, since we did not make any choice, why do you hold us morally responsible for who we are and try to punish us through discrimination?
Yeah.
Question.
Ma'am, very good po. Ako, the reason why I asked this is this. Diba, there's so much of the law you're passing, SOGI and the Anti-Discrimination Bill, which protects, you know, the LGBT community from outside. Parang ganun, ano. Pero usually, ito kaya ako po kinuwento ito, no? Kasi I have so many friends who are in this community. For one time, akala ko ako rin eh. Parang biglang may revelation eh, no? So, ibig sabihin man, di ba dapat, or itong bang batas na ito na kini-create ninyo, meron ba itong protection sa sarili mong bahay? Yan. Sa sarili mong pamilya. Sa sarili mong mga kaibigan o komunidad. Kasi yun nga po yung pinakamahirap. Protected nito yung mga karapatan mo, usually, pag you're the ripe age na, 18 o ano man, ano, kasi pag nagkatrabaho ka na, pag nasa labas ka na. Pero yung bata, habang lumalaki, yun, nakwento nyo po, no? Habang lumalaki, kasi doon siya nagkakaroon ng traumatic something if the parents are not open. If the siblings, if the siblings also, di ba, kasama sa tuksuhan, parang ganyan. Kasama po ba ito? Kasi yun po yung parang iniisip ko.
Let me answer your question. Okay. Oo, medyo ano yan eh, medyo delikado yung aspekto na yan, no? Yung growing years. Kasi medyo diyan pumapasok na yung rights ng parents to instill their own beliefs sa kanilang mga anak. Okay, maaring turuan na ng mga anak nila na, hey, masama maging gay, masama maging lesbian. Pero kung ang anak nila ay gay or lesbian tapos sasaktan nila, ibang usapan na yan. Meron na tayo siyempre mga batas na nagpoproteksyon laban sa violence against children. Now,
abuse.
Yes. Okay. Sa ilalim ng SOGI Equality Bill, what we try to legalize is, actually penalize and prohibit is yung mga tinatawag na conversion therapy. Kasi, in the States, kahit dito sa Pilipinas, merong mga so-called conversion therapies na yung anak na Becky gagawing macho. Tapos, yung mga tomboy gagawing babae.
Girlaloo. Oo.
Oo. So, ang tanong, sa the American Psychological Association, and even mga psychological, international
Specialist.
psychological organizations in the world have already declared that this type of therapies is ineffective and counterproductive. They are actually traumatic. Meron pa nga yung mga run by religious fundamentalists, hinahampas ng Bible.
Oo, mga ganun. Oo.
O binobombard ng mga Bible verses, or they try to exercise the
Exercise
child.
pa. Ayun, exactly.
Oo.
Oo.
Oo,
Parang
they
masamang espiritu ang tingin sa'yo. Parang ganun ang hinahanap nila.
Oo, ganun. So, yon pinagbabawal yon sa ilalim ng SOGI Equality Bill. Another thing is when you try to talk to your child and try to educate him according to religious belief, anak, hindi ka lugod-lugod yan sa mata ng Diyos, kung maaari sana ganito. Okay, that's allowed. That's protected under Constitution. Pero yung sasaktan mo or bring that child to a conversion therapy where they will employ emotional and physical violence, ibang usapan na yan. We have to protect the rights of the child. And of course, hindi na pinanghihimasukan ng SOGI Equality Bill yung karapatan ng mga magulang na educate ang kanilang mga anak sang-ayon sa kanilang religious beliefs.
May isang add na lang ako, ma'am. Kasi ito actually ako case to case, parang sa akin kasi, ma'am, parang I've seen so many of these na growing up, 'di ba, parang wala ka namang mapuntahan, hindi ka naman makaalis ng bahay mo, sinasaktan ka, hindi ka naman makapagreklamo dahil minor de edad ka. Di po ba? Mahirap po. In reality, maganda po yung mga batas na ganyan. Kahit nga hindi nga siya batas lang sa LGBTQ Yung child abuse is a national law. Pero yung nga po, yung pag growing up, you have nowhere to turn to. Some of
Meron
them...
din naman, Sir Michael.
Apo.
Alam niyo yung mga bata, kunyari, inaabuso ako. Punta lang ako sa barangay captain. O kaya mag-report ako sa teacher. Actually, sa alalim ng ating mga batas, sa Child Protection Act natin, pwedeng magsuplong ang mga teacher, mga neighbors. Pag nakikita lang sinasaktan na yung mga anak, mga minor de edad, pwedeng magsuplong. Hindi na kinakailangan yung biktima himself or herself. Kaya nga lang, syempre, sana maging sensitive naman ng ating mga barangay officials o kaya, yun nga, sasabihin pa nila, hayaan mo na anak, ikaw kasi magpakalalaki ka o magpakababae, gaganunin pa. Which happened, during the pandemic, meron mga kaso, napipilitan yung mga Becky umuwi sa kanilang bahay. Tapos hindi pala alam ng mga magulang na nag-transition na siya, binugbog. So nagsuplong siya doon sa barangay, pinababarangay niya sana. Sinabihan pa siya, umuwi ka na, makipag-ayos ka, ikaw kasi.
Yun nga po.
Sinisi pa siya na tinugbog.
Ang pinupunto ko kanina, may mga legal remedies, no? Pero yung nga po, ang hirap din, irereklamo sariling tatay, nanay, baka makulong pa itong mga ito kung sakasakali. Yung ang dinidireksyon ko po sana, mga institusyon po. Meron ba mga institusyon na pwedeng safe haven for LGBTQs who are abused, safe havens for LGBTQs who have no help to or support na para sa kanila. Kasi some of them go into, victims of child labor or child sex slavery o kung ano man po yung mga nangyayari. Kasi wala po mga institusyon na pwede silang pumunta as safe havens. And kung magkaroon po ng ganon, ang mangyayari po, yung safe havens na ito, may statistical collation of their experiences Anong totoong nangyayari? Kasi ang nangyayari po, ma'am, parang anecdotal tayo lahat. May mga kaibigan tayo. Pero sa sobrang dami po nito, ma'am, hindi po ito documented. Parang gano'n. So, what I'm trying... Exactly. Yes, ma'am. Kaya what I'm trying to drive at is, kung meron po tayong mga institutions or safe havens for them to have choices na po pwedeng pinalayas ka, sinaktan ka, sige, hindi naman lahat po pwede. Tama po kayo, pupuntang barangay, lolokohin ka lang ng barangay siya, pakalalaki ka, pakababae ka kasi parang ano man. Yung gano'n po, yung safe haven, I can go there, have therapy, kasi ang traumatic experience po ng bata, ang trauma, pinakamatindi po, ito magbata tayo eh. Di ba kasi hindi pa fully knowledge mo.
Oo.
Pangalawa,
Last
yung
lifetime, they say.
exactly, yung suporta po rin, no? Hindi ka naman pwede magtrabaho agad kung matanda ka na kasi bata ka talaga. So yung ganun pong klaseng bagay, no? Yung SOGI extended also, parang children, non-LGBT, who are abused and traumatized by parents or whatever reason, ito nga po kasi because of the
Okay.
gender. May ganun po
If
ba?
you are a
Na mga ganun?
minor, Michael, actually, I know, to my knowledge, ang DSWD may mga shelters for abused minors. They would
Opo.
even assign social workers. Kaya nga lang, the social workers in identifying the cases of violence and typifying these cases of violence would have to use existing national laws. And
Yun
in
nga.
the absence of national laws that actually recognize that violence is or discrimination is being committed on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity and expression, the cases are not properly identified, and hence
Yan,
there's a lack
wala pa.
of
Oo.
proper documentation so that we can come up with real life statistics to justify the need for such a law. Okay, there
Opo.
are two laws that actually recognize sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. But the purpose of these laws, namely the Safe Spaces Act or the Anti-Bastos Law and the HIV law, do not identify the situation as discrimination or
Oo,
yung
verbal
cases
lang.
of violence against children based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Kaya nga, it's parang a vicious cycle. There is a lack of law, so these cases are not properly identified. So there is a lack of statistics, and in the absence of statistics, the need for a national law is not justified. So ito kami, there is a clamor. Sinasabi ko nga, in the age of social media, mabuti na lang, nare-report at nagva-viral ang mga kaso ng diskriminasyon. And these can be used as evidence to justify the need for the SOGI Equality Bill. Sana nga, magandang idea yan, Michael, yung sinasabi mo, the creation of shelters, LGBT-specific shelters. I would like to encourage yung mga LGUs na mag-set up.
Yeah.
Yung malungkot kasi, Michael.
They can call.
Yes.
Kasi pag SOCMED po, viral na, parang ito, huli na po yun kasi nangyari na naman eh, di ba? Parang ganun. Pero wala to tayong preventative ika nga, no? Parang ganun. Kasi ako, I would really like, kunyari if I were in a similar situation na bata pa ako, somewhere to go to. Yung hindi yung parang, sige, hayaan na lang ng society natin.
Lumayas ka na lang, tapos nagpalaboy ka sa daan.
Oo, na mapariwara ako. Hinayaan. Parang tayo rin po ang naghaya sa ating mga kababayan na mapariwara. Dapat ngayon pala may preventative na po tayo. Maganda po sana, ma'am, no? May ganun po tayo. Parang yung statistika na rin, mabuo na. Diba? Na parang sinasalba natin sila hanggat hindi pa sila sobrang traumatized. Parang ganun.
Yes, actually, meron tayo. Actually, the laws themselves which penalize child abuse or exploitation of children are actually preventive also in their in nature. Hindi lang mo pinipinalize. You know, the mere fact na alam dapat na mga tao o kahit hindi nila alam, you know, the ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Alam nilang makukulong sila, mag-iisip muna yan bago saktan ng kanilang mga anak. And tama ka, sabi ko nga, sana mga LGU mag-create ng mga shelters, not only for abused women and their children, kundi pati rin sa members of the LGBT community. Kasi ang hirap, kunyari trans woman ka, tapos ikaw ay nabugbog, nasaktan. Saan ka papapasukin? May mga iba ayaw papasukin sa shelter for women. Sasabihin, hindi naman tunay na babae yan. Kaya alam
Exactly. Isa pa
mo
yan.
sa isang male facility, baka ma-rape pa yan. Ang hirap, So, dapat siguro magkaroon ng LGBT-specific shelter. And I would like to encourage ang ating mga LGUs na mag-create. Kasi ang lungkot-lungkot, sino ba ang nag-aalaga ng mga magulang pag tumatanda sila? Di ba yung mga anak na lalaki at mga anak na babae nag-aasawa na, may kanya-kanyang pamilya. Sino natitira at nag-aalaga, nagtsatsaga? Mostly mga members of the LGBT community. Pero pagtanda nila, saan sila pumupunta?
Yung tatay mo na binubugbog siya, bakla ka. Tapos siya nag-alaga nung tumatanda na siya. Yung mga ganyan, maraming kwento pong ganyan talaga eh.
Ang pelikula yung storyline na yan.
Pelikula talaga, ma'am. Oo, sobra. Ay,
Anyway,
nako.
I
Yan.
just have one more question before we go sa ating ratatat. I distinctly remember, ma'am, in your last interview with us, you sharing with us your experience sa Congress, House of Representatives, na at that time, nakwento mo, some of your colleagues would still refer to you as he.
Isa lang naman.
Isa lang yun. Oo, isa lang.
I was
Buhay pa ba, ma'am? Buhay pa ba, ma'am? Kinuha na ni Lord. Hindi pa naman nakata. Sorry po. Sorry po, Lord. Hindi, naano ka lang, man. Pinapalo ko lang po yung inyong thought. Sorry.
Pero alam mo, nakakatuwa dun sa tao na yon pinagpipilitan niya akong tawaging he, him, in public na fora, like say the committee hearings or in interviews. Pero pag magkasama na lang kami, siguro dadadala siya. It's so awkward when you see me.
Oo
Ako
nga,
naman
exactly.
nag-tsaka.
Pretty.
Halangan naman na tawagin mo pa akong he, him. Lahat na buong kongreso, ang treatment sa akin is according to my preferred pronouns. And it comes out naturally. Tinatawag na niya akong she. And it's just proving a point, basically.
Okay na, in a way. Nag-improve
Ay,
naman.
naku. Dermatology.
Yeah, dermatology.
Maganda ako sa asawa niya.
Aray ko! Okay, sorry mo. Yan, ang mga realidad ng buhay.
Ay, nako. Okay.
Hindi ka makakambak doon. Ikaw yun. Go.
With that, are you ready? I'm ready to
sige.
ratatat.
Yan.
Okay.
Handang-handa na.
Ay,
Handa na talaga si Ma. Wala pang
just to remind Congresswoman Roman, ratatat is ratsyadang tanong, tapatan at tarantahan. So you're familiar with this because you had one with us already. Okay.
Saka yung first teaser natin, unang bumper natin, lagi kasama si Ma'am doon Ngayon, kasi bago na po kasi yung teaser sa mga recent guests po namin yan. Sa pangatlo, malamang sigurado meron ka na naman dito, Ma'am. Magsisimula po tayo. Siyempre, pag sinabi naming handa na ba you at kayo ay sumagot ng handa na me, doon po tayo mag-i-start. Okay, ma'am? Tanungin natin, Representative Geraldine Roman. Handa na ba you?
Handa na me.
Ratatat! Ratsadang tanong, tapatan at taran-tahan.
Okay, the first segment is Pili Nuts. Pili lang po kayo ng isa sa aking mga sasabihin. Pakpak, buntot, o sungay?
Pakpak.
Yan.
Siyempre, Michael, nakapakpak din yan. Okay. Michael, I don't want this second. Balbasarado or clean shave?
Clean shaven.
Okay. Gabriela
Sandali. Bakit ka nag-i-edit ng ratatat? Sige, go.
Gabriela Silang o Dalagang Pilipina?
Gabriela Silang.
Yan.
Ito naman, gusto ko to. Team Johnny Depp or Amber Heard?
Team Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Okay. Mahal mo o mahal ka?
Mahal ako.
Yan.
Maginoo o medyo bastos?
Medyo bastos.
Pajama or lingerie?
Yan.
Excuse me? Ano ka? Can you repeat?
Pajamas or lingerie?
Ano sa ito magkatulad? Pajamas.
Comfy ang PJs, no?
Okay. Isa
Okay.
pa.
Kilay is life or happy wife, happy life?
Happy wife, happy life. Pero
Yeah.
kilay is
Sa both siya. Ako naman, ma'am. Charot o true lulu? Charot, hindi totoo. True lulu, totoo. Unang tanong. Sexy ba para sa'yo ang lalaking may sense of humor?
truly.
True lulu.
True.
Yan. Is chivalry dead or laos na ba ang maginoong lalaki?
Charot. Meron pa rin.
Meron pa rin. O, dapat. Dapat na ba maging laos na rin sa panahon ngayon ang panghusga, pagtanggi at pagbibigay ng karapatan batay sa kasarian ng tao?
True. Dapat mangging laos. Noon pa.
Yan. Baka kunin kayo ni Lord. Bahala kayo sa buhay nyo, ha? Sige. Bago ka magmahal ng iba, dapat bang mahalin mo muna ang iyong sarili?
True. Love yourself
Yes.
first so you can love others.
Correct.
Yan. O, last na po. Totoo ba ang kasabihan na daig na malandi ang maganda?
Daig naman ng ano?
Daig ba ng malandi ang maganda?
Oo parang lalo.
Thank you, thank you.
Ratata! Ratsadang tanong, tapatan at tarang, tahan.
Sabihin na
kasi-
natin, alam mo, it's been proven quite a
Oo.
number of times. Sadly.
May hugot ka ba, Ina? Hindi, ang landi na. Pwede naman kasi lambing yon. Pwede lambing kasi siyempre, lahat tayo naghahanap ng lambing. Baka nakakalimot kasi kayo mga misis, ha? Dapat may lambing araw-araw. Yan, yun eh. Hindi na
Oo, may konting
tumitigil.
landi naman.
Yeah.
Ayan, yun
Yeah.
din.
Ang ganda mo nga, pang flower vase lang, doon ka lang sa tabi.
Tama.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ina and Michael. I had a great time.
Yan. Sana mapasa na po ito, ma'am. Hopefully, itong kongresong ito ay, ito rin ang sinabi namin dati, no? Pero na inabutan na eh. Pero with you there at the helm, ma'am, there is hope. Lagi may rainbow. Yan. Salamat po, ma'am.
I'd like to greet our listeners and viewers this morning a happy Pride Month. In particular, ang aking mga constituents sa First District of Bataan, namely those from Dinalupian, Hermosa, Orani, Samal, Abukay, and Morong towns. And of course, sa lahat ng mga Bataenyo, love you, happy Pride.
Yeah. Happy Pride! Yay!
Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye!
Okay.
Ayan, ang happy nun, ha?
Geraldine Roman.
Yeah.
Okay.
May hugot ka, Ina, ha? May hugot ka sa kalandian, ha?
Ano yun, mga kwento-kwento. Experience na at sa akin.
Pero tama si ma'am, dapat may konting landi kasi hindi ka flower vase lang sa bahay, di ba? Pwede naman pag kayong dalawa lang, malandi ka na eh, parang gano'n, ang iyong labi-dabi.
O, sige na, ito na ang ayong kuda ni Michael.
Kuda ng lolo nyo! Ano ang kuda ng lolo nyo? Ang kuda ng lolo nyo ngayon ay kung yayakapin mo lang ang lahat ng nagmamahal sa'yo at hindi sila itataboy, araw-araw, parang may party sa buhay mo.
Ikaw may
Yan.
hugot? Parang masaya ka ba ngayon? Ganun ba?
Masaya ako, hindi. Actually, gumagawa ko ng mga ganitong kuda bago tayo mag-episode. Binabagay ko na sa kanya, di ba? Para maganda naman. Yan.
Okay, well.
So, huwag kayo magtataboy. Marami nagmamahal sa inyo. Kayo kasi minsan para sobrang busy nyo na sa buhay, di ba? Ay, hindi. Saka ako napapasin. Di ba? Pero kung titignan mo lang, you're so blessed. Every one of us is so blessed. Count your blessings, not your despair and your chorba. Okay?
Yan, tama yan. Be grateful. Even, especially actually, for the little things that we tend to ignore, not appreciate. Naku. Anyway, that's it for our episode this Thursday morning. We will see you again soon.
Soon talaga. Soon na no? Kasi minsan araw-araw tayo, minsan wala. Pero gano'n.
I just tayo na nga mga. But anyway, until next time, po nagtatapos ang Politiskoop ngayong araw. Ako po si Ina Andolong.
Michael Fajatin po. Bye! Love ya!
Ang Coronavirus Disease 2019 o COVID-19 ay isang nakakahawang sakit dulot ng bagong diskubre na coronavirus. Ang virus na ito ay karaniwang natatagpuan sa mga hayop at hindi pa nakita sa mga tao noon. Base sa World Health Organization, ang karaniwang sintomas na dulot ng COVID-19 ay lagnat, pagkapagod at dry cough. Ilan sa mga pasyente ay nakaranas ng sipon at baradong ilong, sore throat at diarrhea. Samantala, isa lamang sa 6 na pasyente ang nagkakaroon ng hirap sa paghinga at nagiging malubha ang kalagayan. Meron namang mga individual na tinatawag na asymptomatic o mga nagpositibo sa COVID-19 ngunit hindi nagkaroon ng simptomas at hindi nakaramdam ng anumang sakit. Habang patuloy pa rin dinidevelop at sinusuri sa pamamagitan ng mga clinical trial ang bakuna at mga piling gamot laban sa COVID-19, maaari mo pa rin pigilan ang paglaganap nito. Paalala ng mga eksperto, kung wala namang gagawin sa labas, manatili lamang sa bahay. Obserbahan ang physical distancing. Siguraduhin na napapanatili mo ang 1 metro o higit pa na layo sa ibang tao. Maghugas ng kamay. Iwasang hawakan ang iyong mata, ilong at bibig. Magsuot ng face mask. Ugaliin ding takloban ang iyong ilong at bibig kung uubo at babahing. Kapag nakaramdam naman ng lagnat, ubo at hirap sa paghinga, magpatingin na sa doktor. Tandaan, walang problema na hindi nalalagpasan. Makinig at sumunod sa mga payo ng mga eksperto para